Well, hi, everybody, and welcome to another episode of 100 Yards of Football. This is the NFL edition. It's week 15 already. Can you believe it? 15 weeks, only a couple left to go. And we're going to talk about some of the prime games here this week in the National Football League, along with Logan Landers, our producer, engineer, and co host. We also have Vincent Turner, our founder. I'm Harper LeBel. Thank you for tuning in. Guys, week 15 starts off with a Thursday game, a meaningful one in terms of the NFL West, where the LA Rams end up going to San Francisco for a game on Thursday evening at 8 o'clock, 8:15 at prime. But Sunday's games, we're going to avoid a few of them. We're going to go past Kansas City and Cleveland. We're going to look past Cincinnati and Tennessee, Baltimore against the Giants there in New York. The Jets are at Jacksonville, and Miami is at Houston. All of those are 1 o'clock starts. But let's start our week by talking a little bit about the Washington Commanders. Who would have thought they'd be 8-5 at this time in the season? Where last year they're picking number 2 overall. They got Jaden Daniels. He's a rookie, but they're going in New Orleans against the Saints. The Saints had come off of losing 7 games in a row, and now they're 3 out of 4, including beating the Falcons. The 5-8 Saints end up hosting the 8-4 Commanders. Logan, let's start with you. What's impressive to you, at least in my opinion, what the Washington Commanders have been able to do just offensively speaks for itself. They are vastly different than when they were in this position last year at this time.
Oh yeah, and no doubt about that, Harper. And the win they had the previous week over Tennessee, where they put up 41 points, that told me something because they had been struggling for a little while up to that point. They had lost 3 straight games. So people were starting to say, okay, or some of the bad habits from the previous year, it's just the strain of the season. Is that starting to get to them? But that dominant win last week told me that Dan Quinn and the rest of the team, that look, it was a rough spot. We're getting back on track. We still have a very solid year, 8-5. This comes after having a top 5 pick in the draft. So they have exceeded expectations. Jaden Daniels on the year has looked solid. He's going to be closing in on 3,000 passing yards, 15 touchdowns, only 6 INTs. So he's looked solid this year. And there's a reason they drafted him with their number 1 overall pick, and just how well that he has done. And when you look at this Washington team, I mean, they have a lot of really good pieces on their roster. Of course, their running back and Brian Robinson Jr. and what all he can do. And of course, scary Terry McLaurin, their top wide receiver, who's got close to 900 yards and 9 touchdowns this year. But a big blow for this team that it just came out a little bit earlier today at the time of this recording, that's going to be Noah Brown, their big tight end. He's going to miss the rest of the season due to an injury. So that is a piece they're going to have to fill in and have someone step up for in production. So I think that with this roster, with Daniels and whatnot, that they can do it. But I mean, I didn't see Washington coming out this season, Harper, 1 year or just not even a year fully after picking so early in the draft with a rookie quarterback and looking this impressive. It's scary for right now and also for the next couple of years out there in their division.
Yeah, they've been pretty impressive, in my opinion, in turning things around and doing so very quickly. They were right in the middle of the pack in terms of their ability to pass, but running, they're 3rd, scoring, they're 4th, and defensively, they give up about 22 points a game. They're ranked 17th right now. Vincent, what impresses you? We've mentioned a few of the things. What impresses you most about what Washington has been able to do this year?
Dan Quinn. He had some success here in Atlanta. It just got away from him, but I think bringing Cliff Kingsbury as offensive coordinator obviously helped Jaden Daniels. And then defensively, they'll play real well, bringing over Bobby Wagner, one of his old stays from Seattle. But what I really like about Washington right now, they're playing playoff football. They beat the Titans last week, 42-19. And you know this, Hart. When it gets down to playoff time, the team is able to run that rock a little bit. They're going to be very successful. Look what they did against the Titans last week. 45 times they rushed the ball for 267 yards, 5.6 yards a carry. To me, that's championship level football, and that's why the Washington Commanders are very successful right now. Back to you, Hawk.
Well, they're going against the Saints. They're 5-8. New Orleans had about as difficult a time as you can imagine. 7 losses in a row, like I said a little bit earlier. Their remaining games this season are against Green Bay. They've got the Raiders. There'll be a home game against Tampa. Derek Carr is 67% in his completion percentage right now. He's only thrown for 2,100 yards. Remember what a great start that they came out with. 15 touchdowns for him right now at this point in the season, 5 interceptions. He's only been sacked 8 times. So I think he's doing a great job of getting rid of the ball when he knows that there's nobody downfield that he can go to. And in my opinion, Alvin Kamara is the MVP of the team. He's a leading rusher. He's got 938 yards. He'll break 1,000 by this time Monday morning. He's got 6 touchdowns, but he's also got 64 receptions, 485 yards, and a touchdown as a receiver. The biggest issue for them right now is the Saints. Their defense is very average. They give up 22 points a game. They've only got 29 sacks, 13 interceptions, which is impressive. But when it comes down to crunch time, they haven't been able to stop anybody. So that'll be our first game again that we look at. There's a couple others that we want to go over, but the first game, obviously, Washington Commanders at 8-5. They're second in the East, going against the 5-8 New Orleans Saints. The next game that we're going to look at is the Dallas Cowboys. They're 5-8 as well. They're third in the East, and they're going to be taking on the Carolina Panthers. That game in North Carolina. The Panthers are only 3-10 guys, but they're starting to turn things around a little bit. I think when you take Bryce Young out of the lineup, put Andy Dalton in, and then reinsert Bryce with a little bit of a vigor, like, wait a second, I don't like being on this bench. I want to make some things happen. It's not going to be an automatic, complete reversal, but I think he's playing with a lot more confidence right now and a renewed enthusiasm. Your thoughts? Vincent, let's start with you.
You hit it dead on the button. When Carolina benched Bryce Young in the first of the season, I was just worried about the young man. But obviously, I'm going to say this, through maturity. And probably him playing at the University of Alabama, Nick Saban, helped him through a lot. And the one thing during that process when he wasn't starting, something I saw from him, even when the team would walk off the field at halftime or after a game, he shook every player's hand. So that told me that he went back in the lab. He said, okay, I didn't start out good, but I'm going to continue being professional whether I'm not on the field or whether I'm playing. And let's be honest, he's played some very good football the last few weeks. And he played well last week in a loss to Philadelphia 22-16. Now to the bad boys, my Cowboys. I saw a fact on the website after Monday night's loss to Cincinnati. The boys are bad. Looking at that game, I never saw a game, and maybe you can help me out, Harp, that you lost a game when you blocked the punt and a guy on the punt team tried to recover the fumble.
Mm-hmm.
He fumbles. Cincinnati gets it back with about a minute something to go, and you give up a 40-yard touchdown to Jamar Chase. But I'd say this, for the Dallas Cowboy Nation, this is a bad football team. We don't have a lot of good players. We lost one of our best players on Monday night, DeMario Overshawn. That really hurts. But when you look at the Cowboys roster from up, down, I probably don't see at least maybe 7 good players that should be playing in the National Football League. Haven't hit on the draft in several seasons. And what really is hurting me most, we paid Trayvon Diggs a lot of money. And we gave Dak Prescott a lot of money. And now we got Michael Parsons coming up for money. And I'm going to say this and turn it back over to you, Harp. It's this right here. I will look very seriously in trading Michael Parsons to get some draft picks. Back to you, Harp.
Well, that's certainly an option. You got people calling for the heads of multiple individuals, including Jones now. It's tough times there. They can't stop any. The defense is 31st in the league. They give up 28 points a game. They can't stop anybody. And Logan, they can't run. Rico Dowdle's leading the team right now, but they're 28th in the league. They're averaging less than 91 yards a game. I don't know how the Dallas Cowboys have gotten to this spot so quickly after being playoff bound. And, granted, they could take a lot of heat about losing in the first or the second round, but this is a tough one to swallow if you're a Dallas Cowboy fan. Where do you put it right now, Logan, in terms of, things that need to be addressed and how to turn things around for the remainder of this season?
No, I mean, you hit on Harper. It's just when it rains, it pours, right? When you look at the beginning of the year, they signed all the money. They gave Dak Prescott his contract. They gave CD his money. And like I said, they've done some really good stuff for these Cowboys. And you thought coming into this year, all right, we got a solid core here. We lost a couple of pieces, but I still think this team can do good. But then you saw it was a mix of bad injuries, just like you said, pretty much a non-existent running game for the most part, and just a defense that can't really stop much of anyone, it feels like at times. It's just been just a rough year, and you're going to have that as a franchise. Jerry Jones has said that he likes this team still. I don't know if he still feels that way, but it ain't looking good in Dallas. Look, Mike McCarthy, people have been calling for his head for years now. So that might finally come up to the top of the water at this point with just how bad the season's gone. That just does not look good. Micah Parsons, Vincent, as you said, he might be on his way out. We saw he walked off early at their previous game. So that might say, all right, this might be my first step at trying to get out of here. It's just not great right now in Dallas. Your $1 million quarterback, your golden arm, and Dak Prescott. He got hurt a couple of games into the season. Hopefully he can come back stronger than ever. But with injuries, you never really know. Guys can come back and look as good as they were, or they could take a slight dip in production. We don't know yet. But it's just been rough right now for Dallas. And for Carolina, their record's 3-10, but they have not been playing like a 3-10 team here in the last handful of weeks. I mean, just a couple of different possessions against certain teams, and they could have pulled off upsets against three teams who were in playoff contention, and that's the Kansas City Chiefs. You lost by 3 points. You lost by 3 points to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and then as we saw this previous week, they lost to the Philadelphia Eagles 22-16. Carolina, since Bryce Young since he was temporarily benched, and everyone was saying, all right, this is it. We all said he was too small, that he was struggling, that there's too many issues, that he can't be the guy to lead this team to a winning program. And they're not a winning program right now. But you see, like you guys said, whenever Bryce was down, he was lifting up his teammates. That shows leadership. He was putting in work, obviously, behind the scenes. It's the stuff that we don't see that makes guys better. That's what Bryce Young's been doing, because we saw since he's came back from being benched, you see him walk around with more confidence. You see him throw balls that he might have been scared to throw earlier in the season or earlier in his tenure in Carolina that he's throwing with confidence now. And if you're the Carolina Panthers, you got to be able to work with that and build and help out this guy who's hoping to bring your franchise back from the dead, basically. And it all starts with him. It all starts with your hopeful franchise quarterback for many, many years to come. You have to build around him. You have to protect him. You have to get a better O-line, and you have to get some even more depth at wide receivers. Xavier Legette, the young man out of South Carolina, had all the hype in the world. He missed a bet. It was a catch. He should have got a couple this past week against Philadelphia. That could have changed the ball game. It was a 4th and 2. They threw it right to him, and they said, oh, and he dropped it. That could have changed the game. He's had some drops this year. It's a young core out there in Carolina. Just got to be patient, build around them in free agency in the draft. And I think in a couple of years, this is a good team. This could be a team contending in the South. But I think this one might be a little bit closer than some teams might realize, just because Dallas has struggled. But Carolina, like I said, they are 3-10, but they've been playing a lot better here in recent weeks.
Well, you mentioned a lot of things that Carolina needs to do: offensive line, running backs, wide receivers, DBs, everything. I was going to ask that very same question. What, if anything, does Dallas need to do to kind of turn their offseason into something that's a little bit more productive? Let me throw this stat at you before I ask this. And Vincent, I wanted to get your thoughts because obviously you're more pro Dallas Cowboy than anyone on this panel. There are 6 teams in the AFC that have already been eliminated. There's only one in the NFC, and that's the New York Giants. They have 2 wins, and Carolina has 3. I think Carolina is playing with house money right now. They know they're not going to the playoffs, but you know what? Just play hard, fight for your job for next year, and show people on film what you can do. I think that gives them a freedom to where even if we're not going to win the game, we're going to play a lot harder than we used to, and we're going to see where the chips fall. I think they're playing with the freedom right now that they are closer to Kansas City and the others that you mentioned. But Vincent, if you don't mind, in your opinion, if there's many, but what would you fix? Is it an offensive line problem? Is there a coaching problem? Is it defensive secondary? What, if any, would you start addressing more of your attention to try to turn things around near the end of this season and going into the 2025 season for the Dallas Cowboys?
Well, Hop, we always discuss certain things and certain positions on the field, and it's always the line of scrimmage. Looking at Dallas, Tyron Smith played in Dallas for 12 years. We wasted him. Pro Bowl player. Zach Martin is hurt now. So right now, the Dallas offensive line is in shambles. And I've always said this. Going back to the years the Cowboys had their great success in the 90s when they won them Super Bowls, I believe 3 out of 4 years. Look at their D-line. Leon Lett, Russell Maryland, Chad Hennings, Charles Haley, Tony Tolbert, Jimmy Jones. For the life of me, since that time, Dallas has not drafted a D lineman. I believe it's made the Pro Bowl. Think about that. That's been since 96. And I'm going to leave you with this. Harper, you played in the league a long time. You've been with several teams. When you constantly doesn't draft well, over a period of time, that's going to catch up to you. When you make bad free agent signings and signing players that might not be worth that money, then that's why the rails fall off so quickly. And right now, Dallas need a lot of players, man. And how you do that, they need a lot of players on the line of scrimmage. And that's where I'm going to leave it at. Because you're not going to win. And Harper, you even said this. Look at the success of the Detroit Lions. What did you say, Harp?
First rounder. Yep.
There you go.
Yep.
This game doesn't fall far from the apple. You can have all the toys out front. You can have the quarterback throwing the ball. You can have all these things going well, but if you don't have people that can block up front or people that can get after the quarterback up front and stop the run, you're not going to win. Back to you, Hawk.
You made a very interesting point, Logan, before I come back to you with a final thought about the Cowboys. The 90s teams, every one of those guys that you mentioned on the defensive line were small, wasted guys with the exception of Russell Maryland. And Russell wasn't, it's not that he was a big fat guy. He was bigger and rounder because he wasn't as tall as some of these other guys, but lightning quick from sideline to sideline, or at least within the box. He would get from tackle to tackle. But Tolbert, you mentioned Leon Lett, guys like that, big, huge shoulders and smaller waisted guys. Look what the New York Giants did when they were winning those Super Bowls with Strahan, with Tuck, with Osio Manura, with JPP. All those guys were about 6'5", maybe 6'6". Strahan's about 6'4", 275, but small waist. You know what I mean? Just muscular dudes that they were speed and they could get around you to get to the quarterback and they could defend against the run. So it's easy when you think about it because it's a key to success and it works. You've seen other people do it and it works. Why doesn't it work for our team? Because we didn't do it the same way. Anyways, all right, that's my soapbox. Logan, your final thoughts here about the Cowboys and where, if anywhere, do you think they need to turn to start getting things to where they can play Philadelphia again for the division championship?
Yeah, well, I mean, first and foremost, you got to get your guys back healthy. Like Vincent said, there's been a ton of injuries this year. So hopefully you get your whole cast and crew, a lot of really talented players back and fully healthy for the 2025 season. And then you got to start building around that. You got to build with the draft. You can't miss on your draft picks. That is how good teams go to bad, is you can't draft properly or you overpay in free agency. You don't address the issues that you have. And there's clearly a bunch of holes in this Dallas game. Backup quarterback, you would have liked to have hopefully better options than Cooper Rush. I don't know what Trey Lance is up to in Dallas. I don't know what the situation with that may be. The running game, you mentioned Rico Dowdle has underperformed. Let's not forget they signed Zeke Elliott this past all season, and that honeymoon already went away quickly. So you got to address some running room. You got to add on. I like the receiving core in Dallas. They got some good pieces, but you got to fix that defense. Defense you got to get some guys who can get to the quarterback, who can stuff the run, We know that you have a talented secondary, right? With Diggs, he's a really good player, but I mean, you got a bunch of holes you got to address, and you got to hope to piece that together as soon as you can, because we know the fans are not going to take to losing football in Dallas for a long time.
Well, they got to turn something around. They're 31st. There's only 32 teams. That's the way I count them, and they're 31st in terms of their defensive scoring. They give up 20 points a game. That's got to change. I agree with you, Logan. Two teams that are not having problems like that are going to be playing each other here at the 4:25 time slot, and that's going to be Buffalo going to Detroit. Now, Buffalo comes off a really classic game, but a loss against the Rams at SoFi. Oddly enough, they play on Monday night earlier, and they get the 49ers in a snowstorm. There's about 6 inches of snow that falls in that game. Then they go out to California where it's 45 degrees warmer in an evening game out there, and they end up losing a close one, 44-42 to the Rams. Buffalo is 10-3. Their remaining schedule, guys, is New England at home, and then they've got the Jets, and then they've got New England where they play them in Boston. Josh Allen is absolutely amazing. 23 touchdowns, only 5 interceptions. They're 12th in the league in terms of passing the ball. They're 11th in rushing. You put those two together, they're second in the league in scoring. Buffalo Bills, Vincent, we'll start with you. They're a pretty scary team because they play defense well as well, but their offense is amazing.
Buffalo, if I had to say right now, is a team that's coming out of the AFC that Super Bowl implications. Can we put that on the Bills? Mm-hmm. They got a Super Bowl playing Josh Allen, MVP. Last week, he was marvelous against the Rams. 42 yards passing, 3 touchdowns, another 82 yards on the ground, 3 touchdowns. But I'm going to say this, Hawk. There was one concern for me in that game. They gave up 44 points to the Rams. You have bad games defensively. You can maybe help me out, Hawk. Question back to you. Should I be concerned they gave up those many points, or that just something that just happened in a certain game? And I'm going to leave it at that. They playing a Detroit team that's playing solid. Super Bowl implications. The young man from California, this for you, Mr. Travers. You're right. Jared Goff, Cal, 283 yards last week, 3 touchdowns. They got the two-headed monster, the running back position, David Montgomery and Mr. Gibbs, Roll Tide. Armand St. Brown, SC. Aaron Glenn is doing an outstanding job defensively with all those injuries the Lions have had. Just think when they get all their players back defensively that's been injured. This is a solid football team. And I'm looking forward to this game because really, Hawk, I'm going to throw it back on you. Should I be concerned about Buffalo giving up them many points to the Rams, or that just one bad game? Back to you, Hawk.
Yeah, I'm kind of leaning towards the one bad game because they played so well at home against Kansas City and then against the 49ers, against the national audience that they had, not against, but with that, everybody watching. And then, didn't seem like anything worked defensively for them against the Rams out there in California. So maybe they got to have a temperature change. They should have put the air conditioning on, make it a little bit cooler so they can get it done. But, what impresses me about Detroit on the other side, you want to be top 10 in every category. How about being top 5? Would that be cool, right? I'm thinking Detroit is top 4 in every of the leading categories. They're 4th in passing, they're 4th in rushing, they're 1st in scoring, and they're 2nd in defense. They only give up 18 points a game. Logan, the injury bug has been a serious problem. Is it 14 guys? They're either out or on injured reserve for them, but they're still 12-1. Are you kidding me? How is Dan Campbell doing it?
I think to me, what we've seen this year, I mean, look, we've seen it really since Dan Campbell took over, is this locker room believes in Dan Campbell, believes in the message that he's saying. I mean, also, let's not forget this too. Against the Packers this past week, they were 4 of 5 on 4th down conversions. And at the end of the game, they didn't even need to go for it. They just wanted to kill more clock. And they said, all right, hop on my back. I'll carry you to a first down, David Montgomery said. And they moved a little bit closer, got the chip shot field goal, and got the win. Like you said, the injury bug, you would thought for any team in the league pretty much, this is one that would have hurt them, right? That their defense would have been they would have been, middle of the road at this point now, all these weeks later, or trending towards the back. But they just have a keen eye for talent, I think. Because all the players, and like you said, there's a who's who of guys on the sideline right now, not able to play, but all the guys who have stepped in have played their role. And if you believe in your abilities, that's good coaching. That's Dan Campbell. That's the defense coordinator. That's all the other coaches on sideline. And this is a complete team. This isn't a one-man army. This isn't oh, hey, look at me. I can do all this. This is a total team effort. From the passing game with Jared Goff, who's been tremendous, to the running game, the two-headed monsters, we say, with Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery, to the tremendous pass catchers they have here, to the defensive guys who have stepped up. I mean, this Detroit team is absolutely scary. I would not want to play them because they walk into every stadium they're at saying, we're going to win and we're going to whoop your butt this Sunday. And that's what this team is doing right now, and that's why they've been doing so well.
Yeah, their defense is, when you think about it, Aiden Hutchinson was injured after Game 5. He played 5 games. He had 7.5 sacks in his 5 weeks. They don't have a player on their team since, and they've now played 13. This is their 14th that they're getting ready for. They don't have anyone on the team that has 7.5 sacks, but yet they're still getting it done. And as I just mentioned, you can't score on them. You can move it to about the 30, just get outside of field goal range. I guess that's their goal. We'll give you everything you want until you get to about the 30-yard line, and then we're going to start playing aggressive, tough, bite your kneecaps off defense. And I know I'm teasing with that. I'm just saying that the next man up, he may not have the same amount of sacks, but we're going to put pressure on the quarterback. We're going to cover our receivers a little bit longer from a defensive standpoint. We're going to get our linebackers to make more tackles, whatever it is. Here's something about Detroit when I'm doing research. How does Jamar Gibbs and David Montgomery, how do they stay friends? Because they're so competitive. I mean, 771 yards and 12 touchdowns versus 1,016 yards and 10 touchdowns. They are competing at a level that fascinates me, and how that they're still teammates and they're not griping with one another. I think they see the end and the means to get there as something that we're going to do this together. 2 horses can pull more weight than 1 horse versus 1 horse. It's just amazing. Their defense, they have 31 sacks, 14 interceptions, 6 fumble recoveries. But you know what? Like I said earlier, they're number 2 overall in the league in scoring against. Buffalo's still good, though. Am I missing anything, guys, before we move on to the next game? 29 sacks defensively for Buffalo. They're number 8 in the league right now, giving up a little more than 20 points. They're an amazing team, but if they go 10-3, now they've lost that home field advantage that they would have had should they play Kansas City later on in the playoffs.
With Buffalo, they got obviously a tremendous talent in Josh Allen, someone who's improved year after year. I thought that with the coming into this season, I didn't know how the receiving core would stack up. Obviously, when you lose Stephon Diggs, that's a big blow. And credit to the young guys, Keon Coleman out of Florida State, Khalil Shakir has been doing his thing also. They've really stepped up in a way I didn't know if they would. James Cook as well, former University of Georgia player right there. He's done really good as well, 700-plus yards on the ground. So Buffalo has been a nice surprise. I knew they'd do well. I didn't think they'd be as good as they were last year, but they've exceeded my expectations, and Josh Allen is a big part of that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the 425 game, and then the other 425 game that we'll talk about, there's actually 3 today. Lincoln Financial Field in Philadelphia, where the Eagles get to host trans-state rivals here in the Pittsburgh Steelers. Guys, the Steelers are 10-3. They've been through a myriad of coaching and quarterback changes. It still seems like they run. They're able to do that, but I think they're even better with Russell Wilson. I'm not saying anything against Justin Fields. He played well for them and got them started, but they're finding ways to win that not necessarily are creative anymore. It's because we're just tougher and we're better than you. Let's begin with you, Vincent. Your thoughts here about Philadelphia, 11-2, who have a great season, hosting another terrific team in the Pittsburgh Steelers at 10-3. This will be a barn burner.
Obviously, you got both teams playing well. Maybe a Super Bowl preview. I'm going to start with the Eagles. You know Jalen Hurts has to be happy to have a guy in the backfield like Saquon Barkley, who's having an MVP season. So thinking is why A.J. Brown stays upset so much. A.J. Brown, I'm going to look in the camera, brother. Y'all winning. Y'all got potential to get to the Super Bowl. So don't worry about your stats. You're already getting your money. Is it about championships? Is it about you? So stop the complaining, brother. You don't hear the young man from Roll Tide, Devontae Smith, complaining. And I like Philadelphia as a team. They're very solid. Not only doing on the offensive side of the ball. See, it's that one player that you have on your team that you know can put you in that tournament and get you to New Orleans this year. And Saquon Barkley has been the best running back. It's not even close in the National Football League this year. But what's impressed me has been the Eagles' defense. Remember, about 2 seasons ago, and even this year, there was a lot of people out saying that the Eagles are drafting a lot of players from the University of Georgia that's not producing. What's wrong with Jalen Carter? What's wrong with Jordan Davis? What's wrong with Nolan Smith? What's wrong with Nakobe Dean? But you know what? This year, the Dogs, they eating up there in Philly, and their defense is playing real well. And Cooper DeJean, the cornerback out of Iowa, he showed y'all the real deal. Remember the tackle he had on Derrick Henry last week? I like this Eagles football team, man. I think they got a real serious chance to come out of the NFC. I know we talked about the Lions, but they're going to be a problem. Not to the Steelers. I agree with you, Hart. I love Justin Fields. He's a local kid out of Kennesaw, Georgia, Harrison High School. Had a nice career at the Ohio State Buckeyes. I felt that maybe the Chicago Bears was giving up on them a little bit early. But let's be honest here. If we're going to be honest with ourselves, the Steelers are like a whole different offensive football team under the young man, Mr. Russell Wilson. He's giving them something like the deep ball. And another dog, George Pickens, was like one of the best 3 receivers in the game. Najee Harris is running the ball better now. Their offensive line is blocking like the old Steelers of old. And one thing about the terrible Towels, they're going to play defense. You ain't got to worry about that. T.J. Watt, Dante Jackson, and Patrick Queen are going to be Pro Bowl players this year. Back to you, Hawk.
Yeah, don't forget Cameron Hayward having a nice rejuvenation year. 18 points for both of these teams is what they give up, but it's such a slight difference. The Steelers are ranked 5th in the league against scoring, and the Philadelphia Eagles are 2nd. So second best defense. We've talked about the number 1 defense a little bit earlier, but Logan, give me your thoughts. What's going to go down here between Pittsburgh and Philadelphia?
I'll start off with Philadelphia. You guys said beautifully. Obviously, Saquon Barkley is the best running back in the league. It's him, and everyone else is behind him. So the acquisition they did this past year to pick him up, credit to the front office there in Philadelphia. It's worked wonders. He has added a whole new element to this team. And has just made them even more scarier. And that's the thing, too, with this Philadelphia team, is we saw last week Jalen Hurts struggle. Really, last 2 weeks specifically, Jalen Hurts has struggled, only throwing the ball for 118 yards against Baltimore. And then last week against Carolina, only 108 yards passing. So the passing production has went down here in recent weeks. But who's been there to step up? That man in the backfield, Mr. Saquon Barkley. Ran the ball for 107 yards and then 124 this past week. Also got to the end zone. So he's been doing great offensively. And then we talked about all the great guys they have out there on the sidelines catching those passes in Philly with Devontae and A.J. Brown. Also Dallas Goedert, a guy who's done some good work too. And Saquon can also get it done in the passing game if you need him to. You can just flip it out to him and just go off to the races. So offensively, they're solid. Like you said, defensively, they kind of take it to a whole new level. This is a scary team. I mean, Josh Sweat leading your team in sacks with 7 on the year, a guy who we've talked about years before as someone who's got really good potential when he was with Washington. And now he's came over to Philadelphia and kind of figured out the key to getting, being more consistent as a player. Milton Williams doing good work. Jalix Hunt doing some good work for them as well. I mean, as a team, they've got 37 sacks, and I know Pittsburgh, they're right there with 32. So both these teams can get to the quarterback. And T.J. Watt, obviously we know what he's about. Him and his brother have run roughshod over the league in opposing offensive linemen for the last 15-plus years. So TJ is always someone you have to circle on Sunday and say, hey, watch out for this guy. Double team this dude. Do not let him get to our quarterback, or else it's going to be a long day. I like Philadelphia in this one. They have a really just solid team, and they're pulling out gutsy wins. And for Pittsburgh, they have a really good lineup too. I like Pittsburgh, and we all know that Mike Tomlin is one of the best coaches in the league. We know he's the most consistent. That insane streak he has of them finishing above 500 or better since he's taken over the program, them consistently making the playoffs. But now you have to get back to some postseason success. It's been a couple of years since Pittsburgh has went deep into the playoffs. Now is the chance if they want to get there with this core group, I believe, with Russell Wilson, a guy who, look, he was great in Seattle, got him a Super Bowl, went to Denver. That was just just not a good match there, obviously, with the quarterback and the head coach there with Sean Payton. It just didn't work out. And then whenever he came over to Pittsburgh, it kind of just felt like, from what I heard from everyone, just saying, oh, yeah, they'll take a flyer on the old vet and see what he can do. But this is going to be Justin Fields' team, right? He's going to be the one to lead it. And if things go bad, then it's going to be time for Russ to cook. Well, things were going great under Justin Fields, as we saw. They were winning ball games, but they decided, all right, I think we have a better chance to not just win, but look better and win more dominantly with Russell Wilson as our quarterback. And that's what Pittsburgh's done. That's why they're 10-3 on the year. That's why Wilson's done really good numbers, almost a 65% completion percentage on over 1,700 yards. He's got 12 touchdowns, only 3 picks on the season. So he's been very consistent. He's keeping it clean in the pocket. He's not getting fumbles. He's not getting turnovers. He's done really well. And also, as we just said in our previous game and whatnot with the running game emergence, Najee Harris has also looked really good this year. That's added another element. That will open up play action, which we know Russ can cook with. That's his bread and butter right there. So I'm liking this matchup. This is going to be one of those heavyweight fights that you look at on the card. Both these teams slugging it out, and we'll see who delivered a knockout blow. I'll give the slight edge to the Philadelphia Eagles in this one, though.
I can look ahead because I can. Most people don't want to do that, but after Philadelphia plays here against the Steelers, they've got at Washington, Dallas, and the New York Giants. All three are winnable games. It'll be tough to beat the Commanders there. But they got a chance to only 15-2. Are you kidding me? Mm-hmm. After last falling apart the way that they did, every team in the Northeast, and you can go from New England, the teams that play in New York, you can go Baltimore, even out to Kansas City. You've got to win outside in December and January, and you got to be able to run. And if you've got the number one running team in the league right there, and Philadelphia does, you got a chance to be very successful. Plus, you're scoring a lot of points, and you're going against a team that can run the ball as well. So, a great matchup here. We'll move on, but this one at 4:25 is must-see TV on Fox. Next game is on Fox at 4:25. Features the LA Chargers at home against Tampa. Who would have thought that at this time, because of the problems that Tampa was going through, that they'd be in first place in the NFC South, but they are. Baker Mayfield's having himself a heck of a year. You talk about a team that everything offensively in the top 10, top 5 in most categories, going against the number one defense in the league, and only 15 points a ball game is what the Chargers give up. Vincent, we'll start with you on this one. Your thoughts about Tampa there being in first place, going against the second place, the 8-5 LA Chargers.
Huge football game. I'm going to start with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. There were 3 games behind the Atlanta Falcons, and now they're in first place. The Falcons came unglued. But I would say this. If we're going to really be honest with ourselves today, Baker Mayfield's the MVP. Boomer Sooner. There's been a lot of seasons that I've watched a lot of football. And think about this guy was the overall number 1 pick. They didn't want him in Cleveland. Then he went to Carolina. Didn't want him there. Then he goes out to L.A. Plays pretty good football once Matthew Stafford is hurt. Then he comes to Tampa. Remember, Tampa didn't offer him a really nice contract. But you got to be happy for the young man. Out of Lake Travis High School, Austin, Texas. He has played excellent football. And if it was one for him, the Buccaneers wouldn't be in first place. Mike Evans has been hurt.
Yep.
Chris Godwin lost for the season.
Yep.
Bucky Irvin has been one of them rookies that's been a pleasant surprise. Then look what Baker Mayfield's had out front. Jalen McMillan, the rookie out of Washington, has played well. Baker's old friend from Boomer Sooner, for you, Scott K, Sterling Shepard has played well. Baker Mayfield has made K. Otten, the tight end, a player. And we know Tampa's going to play defense. Vita Vea, Levante David, Antonio Winfield. I think when you look at success stories this year in the National Football League, man, you got to give it to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And Baker Mayfield gets some MVP votes for me. And Todd Bowles, he has saved your job too. Now to the LA Chargers. Harbaugh can coach, man. Justin Herbert, I'm going to start with him. Before Mr. Harbaugh got there, he was the guy that threw a lot. But he doesn't throw the ball a lot. And I got a new nickname for Justin Herbert. Protect the football. Last 6 games, he's got 1 INT. When J.K. Dobbins come back, this LA Chargers team is going to be pretty good offensively. Quentin Johnson was a guy that was lost at the wide receiver position. He's had a touchdown, I think, in 5 straight games. But another dog, I hate to talk about the dogs today. Did y'all think Ladd McConkey was going to be that good off the bat? He's been very good. And like you said, Harp, they got the number 1 defense, Bosa, Matt, and Derwin James is playing like any safety that's played at that level in a long time. Sean Taylor, Ronnie Lott, Ed Reed, he's playing like that. This is a very big game for both teams, but to me, this is the game of the day that I'm going to enjoy because you got 2 teams that's fighting for their lives, but 2 teams that's kind of exceeded odds. Back to you, Hawk.
Yeah, the Chargers are tied with the Broncos at 8-5, so it's kind of a must-win for them. And let's be honest, Logan, the way the Falcons have been playing, I think the Tampa could lose and still not worry about it. The Falcons aren't going to catch or pick up any ground the way that they're spiraling downward. But your thoughts about this game before we talk about it a little bit more. Go ahead.
Talk with the LA Chargers real quick. I know a name that's been halting him for the past couple of days, and that's Matthew Wright, the kicker from the Kansas City Chiefs, a guy who put up 13 points against them, including the game-winning field goal. And let's not forget, he was the backup kicker, by the way, after Harrison Butker went down. So that lets you know Kansas City's doing real quick, but tough loss for Los Angeles. One that, a lot of people said if they would have won, they would have had some more eyeballs on them. But like you said, Vincent, Harbaugh is a good coach. This is a team that I didn't think would be where they're at. I thought they'd be lower in the standings of the AFC West. So they've exceeded my expectations already this season. Justin Herbert, a guy who we thought for years, and since he was in the league, was just a gunslinger, right? Passing yards, just 3,000 yards like this, 3,500, so on and so forth. But we see this year with the new head coach, it's a more balanced attack. It's more, let's give the ball off to Dobbins. Let's give it a little bit to Edwards. And we'll throw the ball every here and there, but it's not going to be 3 out of 4. It's not going to be every one drive, just all passes. We're going to get the running game involved too. And that's been a recipe for success for Los Angeles. Now, we know their one of the main reasons that they're doing that is because J.K. Dobbins, when he's healthy, he's a really good running back. They have more weapons on the receiving core now. You mentioned Vincent Ladd McConkey, guy who, whenever he was drafted, I was excited he was drafted just being from Georgia, but I didn't expect him to be leading the team in reception or leading the team in both receptions and in yards this year. It was kind of a who's who. There was no really true number one. They had him. They have Joshua Palmer, Quentin Johnson, as you mentioned. It was just kind of all right, let's see what these guys can do and let's see who will stand out. And we see the young man by way of University of Georgia. He's looked good. A little bit banged up right now, but I think that when he is healthy, when he is productive on the field, he's got to look out for it. But the defense for this Chargers unit is absolutely electric. They have obviously some great players. They can get to the quarterback, 39 total sacks on the season, and they can also get it done in the secondary with 13 picks. I mean, Vincent, you listed a bunch of the really good players that they have, some guys who you kind of turn back the clock a little bit, some veterans who are really starting to produce and have a really good run for it with Derwin James, Joey Bosa, Khalil Mack, Bud Dupree as well. So this is a good mix of defense with some veterans, some young guys, and the offense. It's more younger generation minded. But we're starting to see it's starting to click now. We're starting to see better drives. We're starting to see more crisper routes. And if you're a Chargers fan, that is something I'm looking forward to every Sunday. Now over to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, a team who's now in first place after the Falcons have imploded. They've been playing great football. They have been really solid this year. And like Vincent said, Baker Mayfield is a guy who deserves to at least get a couple of MVP votes. He needs to at least get a couple because of how well he's been able to play, how good this team has looked. This is a team also on a 3-game winning streak, also, by the way. They beat New York, they beat Carolina, they beat Vegas, all 3 teams that they should beat, and they have. So now it's a tougher task compared to weeks past. Let's see what they can do. How many yards can Baker throw for? Can the running game of Rachaad White and Bucky Irving, a very pleasant surprise also. I didn't expect those guys to step up their game as much as they have. Bucky Irving, of course, making a big splash coming out of Oregon. Rachaad White, a guy who's been pretty consistent in the league, hasn't been in the tops of anything, but he's starting to gel and to really work with Irving, and they are getting a really good combo. And also, this is the fact, too, that you guys mentioned it. They've had injuries with their top 2 receivers, and Chris Godwin and Mike Evans. They haven't missed a beat. Baker Mayfield said, I don't care who's out there. You can be the water boy, and I will get you a ball. I will throw it to you, and it's something you can catch. So he's been able to adapt really well with that. Their defense is also top-notch, 35 sacks on the season for them, and they've also got a total of 6 picks, so not quite as many as L.A., not quite as doesn't have that ball hawk as much, but they got some good guys like Vita Vea, as you said, Logan Hall, who they've had for a couple of years, Devontae David, who's been rock solid since he's been there. So like Vincent said, this is a really good matchup here. 2 teams who are fighting for playoff contention, and I'm looking forward to see how this one's going to go. This is going to be a slugfest.
It'll be interesting for me looking ahead. If they win this game, the Chargers have Denver, which is another opponent with 8 wins. Then after that, they go to New England, and then they play the Vegas Raiders. New England has 3 wins. Vegas has 2. Those could be winnable games foreseeably. And all right, now the Chargers are in the playoffs, right? If the playoffs were today, and they're in. So they could win 3 of their last 4 games and still make it. That's what I'm thinking in terms of the math and how does this figure out. Tampa right now, they're in because they're in. They're the division winner. They have Dallas next week. If they lose this, they have Dallas, Carolina, and New Orleans. All 3 are winnable games. You're probably going to win the division. I don't know if anybody's going to be able to catch you if you keep winning. So must win for both teams in terms of staying where they need to be in order to get into the postseason. But that's the 5th of our 5 games that we're going to look at 4 o'clock. Indianapolis is at Denver, so again, important game for the Broncos. New England and Arizona, they tee it up at 4:25 as well. And then Green Bay at Seattle. That'll be an interesting game there out west. That game will be in Washington. On Monday night, you've got Chicago and Minnesota. What can you say about the Vikings? They've played really well this year. They've only got 2 losses. They embarrassed the Falcons last week. And now they've got a Monday night game at home. So they're rewarded with a home game. They'll have a road game next week, though. And then the Falcons are in Vegas. They'll play Monday night as well. There's no more bye weeks, everybody. So we get a full slate of schedules. There's going to be 16 games for the rest of the week over the schedule over the remainder of this season. And then there are going to be some Saturday games. Those flex games will start kicking in as well. Guys, your final thoughts. Let's start with you, Logan. Week 15 will be in the books by the time that next Monday night rolls around, but what are you interested in seeing?
Yeah, we're getting towards the end of the season, right? Guys are banged up. They're tired. They're looking forward to seeing, can I get to the postseason? Can I take my team here? Are we good enough as a team, as a unit? Are we good enough to win our division, to clinch a playoff spot, to get to a wild card berth perhaps? This is where it starts, right? We ain't got many weeks left in the season. There's a few games left. It is a very small margin of error. You have to be on point if you're fighting You have to win these games that you're supposed to win, that if you're the heavy favorites, you can't be upset because there's a team 9 times out of 10 that's right behind you waiting for you to slip up and hoping to jump your spot in the playoffs. So we got a lot of good games this week. We previewed the top 5 of them, but like you said, Harper, there's so many other just good games this week that we're getting to some solid ones now. Like I said, there's going to be some Saturday games. We got a doubleheader on Monday night. So we're getting a lot of football here with a few weeks left in the season, and I'm all for it.
Man, we got 4 games left. I'm going to start honestly from the bottom of my heart. I can't believe the Atlanta Falcons are falling apart. And the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in the lead in the NFC South. That is very, very crazy to me. And the Falcons, it's very interesting that they're going to stay with Kirk Cousins. And my second and final thought, the Kansas City Chiefs keep winning. Are they going to legitimately win 3 in a row? Be the first team to win 3? That's what I'm looking at. They keep winning. They win all these close games. You got to think their luck is going to run out here. It's going to run out real soon. Back to you, Mr. Harper LeBel.
Yeah, you wonder if they're just on cruise control right now. They're just getting through it because they just naturally are better than everybody. When they really start to put it together, and I'm not saying they haven't, but we're used to them scoring 40, sometimes 50 points a game. And it's just been amazing to me how good they've been, even when they're not good.
Yes.
It's mind-boggling. But that and many other things still await for the rest of the season. But for Week 15, this is our viewpoint of the National Football League and where we stand. So we want to thank everybody for tuning in today. We appreciate it. For Logan Landers, our producer and engineer, and for our host and founder, Vincent Turner, I'm Harper LeBel. Thanks again. 100 Yards of Football certainly appreciates you and your viewership. In the meanwhile, just have a great day, everybody. Thank you for tuning in, and all the best.